My mother-in-law stood in the church doorway and told 300 guests the wedding they were watching was never the one her daughter and I had planned, and she said it with a smile still frozen on her face. My name is Daniel Marsh. I am 31 years old. I work as a project manager for a construction firm in Columbus, Ohio, and 2 years ago I fell in love with a woman named Sarah Whitfield. Sarah taught second grade at a public school on the east side of the city, and she had this way of making every room feel warmer just by walking into it. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and within 8 months I knew I wanted to marry her. Her mother, Linda, welcomed me at first with hugs and homemade lasagna and long conversations on her back porch. Linda was a retired school administrator, sharp, organized, and used to being in control of everything around her. I did not think much of that in the beginning. I thought it just meant she cared. Sarah warned me once, half joking, that her mother liked to run things, but she said it the way people describe a parent who likes to cook too much or clean too often, like it was a quirk and not a warning. When I proposed, Linda cried real tears and said she had always wanted a son. Sarah and I started planning a small wedding, 60 guests, an outdoor ceremony at a vineyard an hour outside the city, simple flowers, a string quartet, everything we could actually afford on a teacher's salary and a project manager's paycheck. We were happy. We thought the hardest part was behind us. The first sign of trouble came 4 months before the wedding, when Sarah showed me an email from the vineyard confirming a guest count of 140 people. We had booked for 60. Sarah called the coordinator, and the woman on the phone said, "Your mother called last week and said the numbers had changed. She said you two were swamped with work and asked her to handle the updates." Sarah's face went pale. We drove straight to Linda's house, and when we asked her about it, she just laughed and waved her hand like we were overreacting. "I only added a few of my closest friends and some cousins you barely remember," she said. "You'll thank me later. A bigger wedding means more gifts, more memories, more people to celebrate you." Sarah tried to explain that we could not afford a wedding that size, and Linda said, "Don't worry about the money, I already spoke to the vineyard about a payment plan, I'll cover the difference." It sounded generous on the surface, but it did not feel like a gift, it felt like a takeover, and neither of us knew yet how deep it went. Over the next few weeks, small things kept appearing that we had never agreed to. The wedding planner, whom Linda had hired without telling us, sent over a color scheme of deep burgundy and gold instead of the soft sage green Sarah had chosen. When Sarah called to correct it, the planner said, "Your mother told us this was the final decision, she said you changed your mind." We started keeping a folder of every vendor confirmation just to track what was actually happening to our own wedding. Sarah tried talking to her mother calmly. "Mom, we need you to stop making changes without telling us," she said one evening at dinner. Linda set down her fork and said, "I am not making changes, I am helping. You two are so busy, someone has to keep things moving." Her tone stayed sweet the entire time, which somehow made it worse. She never raised her voice, she never argued, she simply smiled and kept doing whatever she wanted. 2 months before the wedding, Sarah found out her mother had personally called several of our closest friends and uninvited them, replacing them with co-workers and church acquaintances Linda wanted to impress. One of Sarah's college roommates, a woman named Priya, texted her out of nowhere asking why she had received a call saying the wedding was now family only. Sarah had never said anything like that. When we confronted Linda again, she finally admitted it. "Some of your friends are a little rough around the edges for this kind of event," she said, still smiling, still calm, like she was discussing the weather. I was protecting the image of the day, That's all a mother wants to do. Sarah started crying in front of her, and Linda reached over and patted her hand and said, "You're just stressed, brides get emotional, this is normal." I remember standing there thinking that this woman had just erased her daughter's closest friends from one of the biggest days of her life and was calling Sarah's tears an overreaction. By the time we were 3 weeks out, the guest list had grown to nearly 200 people, the venue had been switched to a large banquet hall that Linda preferred, the flowers were burgundy instead of sage, and the seating chart had Linda's second husband's business partners at the head table instead of my own brother and his wife. Every single change had been made behind our backs, always with the same explanation, that she was simply helping because we were too busy or too stressed to handle it ourselves. And every single time we asked her to stop, she smiled that same warm, patient smile, the kind of smile that made other people believe she could never be capable of anything manipulative. When Sarah's father found out how far things had gone, he sat both of us down and said, "Your mother has always had a hard time letting go of control, this is just how she loves people, you'll get used to it." Sarah's older sister told her over the phone, "Just let mom have her fun, it's one day, don't make a big deal out of it." Even my own mother, who liked Linda from the start, told me quietly, "Maybe it's easier to just go along with it, weddings are stressful enough without a family fight." Nobody seemed to understand that this was not about flowers or seating charts anymore, it was about two grown adults being erased from the most important day of their own relationship. I tried once more to reason with Linda myself, sitting across from her at her kitchen table, keeping my voice steady. "Linda, this is our wedding, not yours, and every decision needs to come from us first," I said. She nodded along, agreeing with every word, and then 2 days later changed the catering menu without a single phone call to either of us. It became clear that agreement meant nothing to her, it was just a way to end the conversation until she could go back to doing whatever she wanted. Sarah stopped sleeping well. She started crying in the car on her way to work. One night she looked at me and said, "I don't even recognize this wedding anymore, it doesn't feel like mine, it feels like something my mother is throwing for herself and using my name for." I had never seen her look so small and defeated, and it broke something in me to watch the woman I loved disappear a little more every day under the weight of her own mother's need for control. The lowest point came exactly 1 week before the wedding, when Linda sent out a final printed program to all 200 guests without showing it to us first. Sarah found out because a cousin posted a photo of it online. The program listed Linda as an official host of the wedding alongside us, thanked her personally for organizing the entire event, and included a paragraph about her own second marriage that had nothing to do with Sarah and me at all. Sarah sat on our bedroom floor holding that program and just stared at it in silence for a long time. When she finally spoke, she said, "She didn't just plan a wedding, she stole mine and put her name on it." That night, we made a decision. We were done asking Linda to stop. We were done hoping she would respect a boundary she had ignored for months. We decided we would take the wedding back, no matter what it cost us. We spent the next 5 days quietly undoing what she had done. I called the banquet hall and cancelled it, forfeiting the deposit Linda had paid, and Sarah told her we would repay her every cent later, because we did not want to owe her anything that gave her leverage over our lives. We reached out to the original vineyard, and by some miracle they still had our original date open because another couple had recently cancelled. We called every uninvited friend personally and invited them back, including Priya, who cried on the phone and said she never thought she would get that call. We contacted the flower shop and switched everything back to sage green. My brother agreed to stand beside me instead of Linda's second husband's business partner. We printed a new program ourselves, simple, 1 page, with just our names and the people who actually mattered to us. We did not tell Linda any of this. We knew if we did, she would find a way to undo it again. On the morning of the wedding, Linda arrived at the banquet hall she had booked, dressed and ready, only to find the building empty and locked, with a note taped to the door from the venue manager explaining the event had been relocated at the request of the bride and groom. She called Sarah's phone 11 times. When she finally reached the vineyard and marched into the ceremony space an hour before the guests arrived, she found sage green flowers, 60 chairs instead of 200, and a printed program with her name nowhere on it. She stood in the doorway, and this was the moment I described at the very beginning. She smiled that same practiced smile even as her voice shook, and she said in front of the small group of us setting up chairs, "This is not the wedding I planned." Sarah walked up to her, calm in a way I had never seen before, and said, "No, Mom, this is the wedding we planned, the one you never let us have." Linda's smile finally cracked. For the first time in months, she had nothing scripted to say. Some of the original 200 guests showed up anyway, confused, and were gently redirected by the vineyard staff to the correct location down the road, which Linda had also invited without asking. Sarah's father pulled her aside before the ceremony and quietly apologized for staying silent for so long. Linda did not attend the ceremony. She left in her car, still in her mother of the bride dress, and drove home alone. Sarah cried a little walking down the aisle, but they were the first tears in months that came from happiness instead of exhaustion. Our wedding was small, imperfect in small ways, chairs borrowed at the last minute, a playlist instead of a string quartet, but it was ours, every single detail chosen by the two people whose names were actually on the invitation. My brother gave a short toast that night, raising his glass and saying, "I have never seen two people fight this hard just to have a normal day." Everyone in that small vineyard tent laughed and cried at the same time. Linda reached out 3 days later, not with an apology, but with a text asking why we had embarrassed her in front of her friends. Sarah did not respond for a long time. When she finally did, she wrote one sentence back: "You didn't lose a wedding, Mom, you lost the chance to be part of ours." We have rebuilt a careful, distant relationship with her since then, one with real boundaries instead of quiet smiles hiding quiet control, and every anniversary we celebrate reminds us that the day almost belonged to someone else, until we finally decided to take it back.